Good evening, everyone. My name is Elle Irvine. I'm the artist who created Immeasurable, a collaborative portraiture project exploring the psychological experience of eating disorders. I am honoured and amazed to share that Immeasurable came second in the student section of the FotoVisura Award for Outstanding Personal Photography Project. One image from this series is on display downstairs as part of the Spotlight exhibition, along with all the other incredible works who placed in these awards. First and foremost, I'd like to offer my thanks to the organisers and judges of the FotoVisura Awards, Adriana Teresa Laterney and Graham Laterney, and Tammy Law, who organised for me to speak tonight. I'd also like to thank Angela Blakely, who oversaw the progression of this work when I first began it in my third year of university, offering invaluable advice and support. The same goes for Kelly Hussey Smith and her partner Alan Hill, who have been instrumental in my growth as an artist. I've also had support from the Eating Disorders Association of Australia, particularly Desi Arkilis, who has assisted me in the direction of my project as well as helping me to advertise for participants. I need to thank my family and friends who have encouraged me, supported me, and believed in me throughout this entire journey. This extends to two special people who have been involved in my journey from early on, Melissa Hogan and Yvette Greenhalgh. They have kept me grounded and shown me how to fly, and I am forever grateful. The final people I need to thank are the people who have been directly responsible for keeping me alive during the numerous times that I wasn't sure that was possible. A sincere thank you to my three doctors, Dorothea Eburn, Jane Robertson, and Malcolm Foxcroft. I extend the same gratitude to a special number of nurses who have gone above and beyond to convince me of my worth and the potential direction of my future, who have looked after me night and day and refused to let me go. I ask you to be grateful to these people on my behalf, but also to pray for them because they are and will continue to be in the front line of the battle, fighting for my life, which means dealing with my shenanigans, my tomfoolery, and my mischief, which is often a thankless task. And last but the opposite of least, I have to thank Deborah G, who has been involved in the project from day one, from being a participant to a photographer's assistant, from carrying lights to trekking up cliff faces, from facing freezing temperatures and embarrassing situations to scampering down deserted tunnels, dodging cars to get that split-second photo. I am lucky to call her my best friend and my favourite person in the world. So we're here today to hear about Immeasurable, and the first thing I need to explain is my own personal reasons for creating it. I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa when I was 15 and have been suffering for several years with symptoms before this diagnosis. I was also diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety disorder. This is all important to my journey, but it was not my personal experience that drove me to desperately pursue awareness. It was the stories of the people I met in hospital. In around 11 admissions to a private eating disorder facility in Sydney, starting at 15 and ending at 20, each admission I shared a unit with 22 other people suffering from anorexia or bulimia. As you can imagine, with a rotation of patients coming in and out, I have met hundreds of other sufferers, all who battled every day to find a life worth living. Some who made it and some who didn't. Since I turned 20, I've had approximately 19 hospital admissions to different public and private facilities here in Brisbane, totaling around 18 months out of 3 years in hospital. It is during this time that I began Immeasurable, to explore the different experiences of eating disorders and to give the amazing, courageous people I had met a chance to tell their story, to have a voice and to have their voice heard. The title of photographer allows me the immense privilege of access into people's lives, their stories and their history. But with privilege comes responsibility, and my responsibility to each participant is to present their journey as it is relayed to me, as honestly as possible, without judgment or bias. It is a great honour to be trusted with this responsibility, and I believe that in photography, as in life, as in everything, you get out what you put in. To this end, I have chosen to include myself and my journey in my work, as it is my unique position as both an observer and a participant in this scenario that has allowed me access to create this project. To create this body of work, I have first asked my participants to imagine a physical place which represents the psychological landscape of their minds while living with an eating disorder.
person to find a location that resonates with their experience, so it's a little bit more true to what they're imagining. I also ask each person to provide me a handwritten statement that further explains their situation. It gives any additional information they wish to share. For the photographers in the crowd, I think there's probably a few people who would question the use of the handwritten statement because it's a little bit overdone and everybody remembers all of Jim Goldberg's work, which has sort of been done to death, and people now believe it's a little bit kitsch. I'm really sorry to those people, but I'm also going to have to defend myself because the intention of Immeasurable is to let individuals speak for themselves. I'm not telling one story, but many. I want my audience to feel a connection to each person, and I believe that like our fingerprints, our handwriting is a small detail that makes a connection to each person. By encouraging this personal expression, I'm also hoping to encourage compassion, empathy, and hope, something I believe would be inhibited by using typed statements. In most circumstances, it's an imperative part of my process to read participants' statements before shooting, as the tone of the statement helps me to conceptualise the emotions they are trying to express, and therefore helps me to determine how best to undertake their portrait. Tonight, if I asked each one of you to think of a physical location that represents your mind, what would you choose? Would you choose a dangerous cliff face, a dark tunnel with no visible light, a spider web of interconnected ropes suspended metres above the ground? Maybe you choose an open grave. These are just some of the locations my participants chose. These are locations that represent their headspace 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for months, years, and in some cases, decades. Imagine yourself living in those landscapes, unable to get out, with your family and friends around you but not able to penetrate the darkness. Imagine living in those landscapes and having professionals telling you that you could die there, with acquaintances and strangers and occasionally trusted friends telling you that you are vain and selfish and attention-seeking, telling you that being a size 6 is a ridiculous goal to sacrifice your health for. They tell you just to eat. But can you see how these perceptions of vanity and eating disorders do not fit with the rest of the picture? You don't go on a journey of self-destruction, of self-torture and slow suicide just to look pretty, to fit into smaller clothes. You do it because you are searching in vain for a path that leads you to a better landscape. And at some point, you came to believe that controlling your food and punishing your body might lead you there. Within my body of work, there are 3 people studying medicine, 6 people studying nursing, 3 training to be physiotherapists, 1 training for the police force. These people are not just eating disorders, they're humans with goals and passions and hopes for the future. But we get stuck on the labels and struggle to see past the diagnosis to the person underneath. Given the opportunity to recover, these people go on to do amazing things. I cannot tell any one person's story for them. The best I can do is to give them an opportunity to tell it themselves. And many have bravely agreed. They have spoken out and chosen to shed the shame and stigma associated with this disorder in order to help me create awareness. I cannot stand here and tell you what life was like for them. I can only tell you what it is like for me, in the hopes that some of you here today will walk away with an enhanced understanding, an awareness that just might help someone you know someday. When I graduated high school, I listed my favourite defining quote as, "If you can't be a good example, at least you can be a horrible warning." Today, I'm trying to be both. Imagine that you have been kidnapped by somebody you know, an acquaintance, someone who seemed harmless and offered you support when you felt low, who built up your trust in them by being there for you, whenever you needed it, whenever you needed advice, honesty, or help. They gave you advice and you followed it. It made you feel better for a little while. Then one day, after you've built up trust and believe they are truly looking out for you, that person changes and distorts in front of you. They tell you that they are in charge of you now. They clamp their hands over your mouth and tell you that you need to stay quiet. You cannot tell anybody they exist. You don't go anywhere, and you don't do anything without their say-so. They start telling you that they only took control because you're a terrible person who doesn't deserve to live, that they are the only person who can help you to sticky tape the mess you've made of yourself back together into something approaching a respectable human being. You are lucky to have them because no one else wants you, cares about you, will tell you the truth. You can trust them and only them. It is a voice that tells you you will not be in charge of your life anymore because it knows better than you. You are scared, terrified, but you do what it says because it's helped you in the past when things seem to be spinning out of your control. Slowly, with cunning and guile, it takes over everything. It makes you lash out at people you love, push them away and retreat from human contact because your kidnapper tells you that they are not to be trusted. They don't love or care for you and they want to hurt you. You only believe it because of the times you felt let down, been hurt, been disgusted with yourself or felt ashamed. The only thought, the only desire is to feel good about yourself, if only for a second, to avoid those feelings of failure and worthlessness. And the kidnapper tells you it will help you to do just that. So who are you to argue? The kidnapper also tells you that you are worthless, that you will never be anyone worth knowing. Deep down, you've started to suspect this anyway. So when you get this confirmation, it is all you need to let go of everything. Swap your passions and your dreams for the instructions the kidnapper told you. Don't eat that, you don't need it, don't indulge because you aren't worth nice things. Feel the emptiness in your stomach, embrace it and accept it. Reject everyone before everyone rejects you. After a while, you are brainwashed and you slavishly defer to its opinion, believing that it's leading you down a golden path towards security, to happiness and to freedom. Occasionally, you don't listen to the kidnapper. You do something impulsive. Maybe you skip your workout because you're tired, or you choose something to eat that the voice hasn't approved. In the second that you do, you feel a reckless abandon, a desperate desire to fill the emptiness, if only for a second. But then the screaming begins. You are walking around in your home, going to work, going to school, but you are not free. The kidnapper is with you everywhere, every second of every day. It is a whole separate person that defines you, and yet it is also part of you. It is everything, all the bad parts of you, separated out into a second entity. When you don't listen to it, when you do something that contradicts its orders, it screams as loud as a siren in your head, pressed directly against your eardrums, so loud that there is nothing else in the world but you and the voice, screaming. It tells you that it always knew you were weak, that all it is doing is trying to save you pain and humiliation. It is trying to make you independent and reliant on no one but yourself, so that no one will ever again have the power to let you down. That voice is so loud, so persistent that it permeates every layer of your consciousness, and you start to wonder, is it wrong? No, it's helping me. This is when the Stockholm Syndrome kicks in. You start to sympathise with your kidnapper, because sometimes it offers you little crumbs of support. Today you did well. Look how strong you were. You managed to overcome the basic human drive to eat. You're amazing, and if you keep listening to me, soon you'll be happy. You'll be in charge. This chaos will stop whirling around you like a tornado, and you will be calm and content. You just need to do a little more. Try a little harder. Listen to me, and I'll make you into a worthwhile person one day. It cleverly switches between praise and torture in order to keep you its slave. So you agreed, and you promised to try harder tomorrow. You believe that there will be order and quiet instead of the chaos, destruction and confusion that comes with ordinary outside life. But the kidnapper is unpredictable, unstable and violent. The crumbs of encouragement get less frequent and you crave the approval again. You work harder, run faster, eat less, anything to have the voice tell you that you did well today and tomorrow will be better. After all this, there is nothing much in your life but you and the voice, the kidnapper, the eating disorder. There is no goal, no person, no outside force that means as much as the relentless pursuit of quiet, order, and calm. As well as having psychological control, the kidnapper's constant instructions to avoid nutrition leads to a physical reaction, starvation. And starvation carries with it a host of symptoms and effects that only serve to increase the stronghold of the eating disorder. In order to conserve energy, your body ceases any non-essential productions. Circulation becomes poor, the mind isn't operating as it usually does, and emotional reactions are dulled and concentration slows. Muscles weaken and your stomach shrinks. Most of these effects are used as weaponry against you by the voice. Your stomach has shrunk, so you eat smaller and smaller meals but still feel full. Why? Not because your stomach has shrunk, because you're greedy and out of control and ate too much, because you were weak and ignored the voice. When your mind is slower and your emotional reactions are less, the voice points out how much better it feels to be quiet, to be devoid of care, to be flat and empty. Without as many neurons firing, your brain is a quieter place, except for that pesky voice, but after all, it's helping you. Because your eating disorder kidnapper demands secrecy, this means that you're forced to wear a mask when you're around people, even your family, even your partner or children or parents. The kidnapper tells you to carefully craft your disguise so that no one notices it is living with you, because it knows that to risk exposure is to risk its existence. The power and control of this kidnapper is immense, and the longer it is allowed power, the stronger it grows. It spreads its roots out into your body, your brain, your soul, until it is firmly implanted and has no intention of leaving. This is why early intervention is key to eating disorders. 90% of patients diagnosed and given effective treatment within 3 years of the onset of symptoms will have a positive outcome within 5 years. That's 90% of people who recover. This is compared to a 20% success rate for those people whose treatment has commenced after the 3-year mark. 20%. A 70% reduction in success rates is phenomenal, and the amazing thing is that early diagnosis does not necessarily start with doctors, with trained professionals. It usually starts with us. Noticing a family member or friend exhibiting signs of an eating disorder and taking action. That 70% lies in the hands of the public. But most people do not know how to look for signs and symptoms. They ignore warning signs because they simply do not understand. People look at their friends dieting with concern, but they believe that anorexia is synonymous with skeletal. So if their friend is not skeletal, they must not be anorexic. Therefore, they are not in trouble. It's just a dieting phase or a plea for attention. Nothing to worry about. The same thing happens with parents, with doctors, and teachers and siblings. They don't want to believe they're looking at a deadly mental illness. When they are conditioned to expect a walking skeleton, they sigh with relief. That's not what's happening here, and there is no need to panic. But someone can appear healthy and still be in danger. We don't understand how to look for symptoms. We dismiss oddities as normal behaviour because in the society that we live in, we've got to face it, how many people in our life do we know who skip meals, talk about diets, hate their bodies? It's pretty much everyone. Everybody's talking about weight loss. And it's so common, it's so everyday, that people miss the warning signs and individuals spend years held hostage by their illness before anyone realises they need to intervene. That is what happened to me, and the blame lies nowhere. My family and friends had concerns. They had worries and niggling thoughts at the back of their mind, but they didn't know how to react. They didn't know who to turn to, how to help, or what to say. They were left to fight a war with no idea of the opponent they were facing. They had no idea that my bizarre food rituals, my compulsive exercise, and my mood swings were all signs that I was being gagged and bound by a violent hatred directed only at myself. They had no idea that I spent every waking hour distracted by overwhelming shame and disgust with myself and the person I perceived myself to be. They didn't know that in a few years I would be facing possible death, that I would be facing permanent physical damage. They didn't know that I would spend the next decade in and out of hospitals, both for emergency and long-term treatment. And therein lies our fundamental problem. They didn't know. The following is an excerpt of a piece of writing I composed when I was 15 after battling an eating disorder for a few years. Please keep in mind that I wrote it when I was 15, so it's a little bit strange. Every day when I wake up, I consider the choices I have, and the other side of me places so many restrictions on my routine that I can barely remember a time before her voice was in my ear, incessantly screaming at me for allowing myself any semblance of normality. She is in my head every second of every day. She holds me by the waist when I approach a table of food. I can feel her fingers digging holes in my stomach, warning me, one slip and I will regret it. She never misses a thing, and you very quickly learn to never give her a reason to punish you. You cannot ever question your limits in the face of an eating disorder because there is only one need, one choice, one option. Everything else becomes irrelevant in the pursuit of this mirage. Family, friends, and happiness are left far behind as you trip and stumble your way down into a void that you feel you can never fully climb back out of. That person you used to be is torn off and left behind, while family and friends still plead with the shell of the person who used to be Elle, while I stand at a distance with their cold arms around me, oblivious to the pain in their eyes as they beg me to come back to them. That old Elle is gone and squashed down until she is no more significant than a speck of dust. I believe that some people can wrest their crumpled, torn bodies back from the grip of anorexia, but I know that I do not deserve to be free of her. She saved me when I had no one else to hold onto, and now her voice is the only one I can trust. All of this was going on in my head while my family was standing back, with worry starting to be etched into their faces and fear and stress in their hearts. When they searched for advice, for support, for help, they found none. They stood back, wringing their hands and desperately trying to understand what was happening. They couldn't help because they didn't know what they were facing, and by the time they figured out what was happening, I had Stockholm Syndrome, and I fought like hell to stop them from taking my captor away from me. I've spent 11 years with my kidnapper. Being held hostage by this arsehole of an eating disorder has cost close to $350,000 purely on hospitalisations. Out-of-pocket costs for eating disorders in Australia are estimated at around $585 million per year. Eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness, and 1 in 10 women with anorexia nervosa do not live for more than 10 years after the onset of the disorder. Funeral costs for premature death caused by eating disorders is estimated at around $9 million per year. For my part, I can attest that funeral costs might be financially calculated, but the emotional costs are infinite. It's difficult to look at statistics and imagine the faces behind the numbers. Tonight, I'd like to share with you 5 women who were once part of my life. Some of them closer than others, but all women that I cared for and respected. Tamika, who died this year, several months ago. Alana, who died several years ago. Bonnie, who also died about 2 years ago. Christina, who died last year. And Lisa, who died 2 years ago. Of these 5 women, all had eating disorders. Of these 5 women, all had fought for years. Of these 5 women, 4 were under 30. 3 of these women died due to suicide. 1 died due to kidney failure, and 1 died due to heart failure. These are just 5 women who were the faces behind the mortality statistics. They were loved by thousands of people. Can the cost of their loss really be measured? The holes left behind when these people are torn from our lives is infinite, irreconcilable, and immeasurable. Given the immense cost to individuals, families, communities and government, it makes sense that we would be focusing on prevention of these illnesses, if not for quality of life, but at least for the cost of treatment. The socio-economic cost is approximately equal to $70 billion per year. And yet public treatment for eating disorders is next to non-existent. New South Wales plays host to 4 public beds assigned to treat eating disorders. Queensland is proud to boast 8. This is a travesty that leaves the other 913,000 people in Australia suffering with eating disorders to either lay down immense costs for private treatment or suffer with minimal help. These should not be the only options. Anybody looking at the situation without bias might ask, what can be done? What can we actually need to do? The first step is awareness. The first step is understanding. With education and understanding comes prevention, and with prevention we can avoid excessive loss of life and income. Our current societal values are skewed towards the controlled individual. Unfortunately for many people, an outward projection of control includes a portion that connotates control of the body. People are obsessed with weight and shape because of the connotations. A person in control of their body is in control of their life. A person perceived to be in control of their life is rightly valued and applauded. Unfortunately, for those of us predisposed to eating disorders, whether through genetics or circumstance, we take this idea of projecting an image of control and we end up letting it control us. In the process of trying to appear independent and self-sufficient, we end up appearing needy, lost, and out of control. But people hear eating disorder and only think of food, not of the psychological torment that steers us towards food as a means of control. People hear anorexia and think not eating. The problem with these assumptions is that it leads to a misinterpretation. Someone with anorexia just needs to eat. But this is wrong. Anorexia nervosa defines a psychological condition and not a physical inability to eat. A person with anorexia can be forced to eat to regain weight to a healthy standard, but the weight is just a symptom of the larger problem, and without solving the internal struggles that drove an individual to an eating disorder, the eating disorder will just reappear over and over until the psychological needs of the patient are met, and the insecurities that drove us to this slow form of suicide are resolved. This is where education comes into the question. We can't treat people if we don't have at least a basic understanding of the underlying issues. If we proceed based on superficiality, we will fail time and time again to save people or to stop people from needing to be saved. This was my driving reason behind creating Immeasurable. I wanted to create a series which allowed individuals to voice their experiences. In life, we are always searching for absolutes. We look for certainty, and when things do not fit into the boxes we have created, we often reject them. I want people to know, to look deeper and understand that eating disorders do not contain within them a universal truth. There is no singular trigger for eating disorders that we can safely point to as an explanation, and as humans always searching for answers, I understand that can be incredibly frustrating. But there is not one weight, one gender, or one age that defines them. Each person I have worked with for Immeasurable is given the opportunity to explain their individual experience. The only unifying aspect is the horrific, painful trauma that each person expresses, the isolation and desperation of their psychological experience. My hope for the project is that it becomes a window into a kaleidoscope of experiences, that people will use the work as a portal to a clearer understanding of our lives with this illness. I have taken great care and pride in ensuring that Immeasurable does not contain numbers. This is for 2 reasons. Firstly, so that you don't focus on lowest weights or sensational meal plans describing minimal diets, because I believe that that only reinforces the eating disorder as food problem. But also because the people involved in my project find mention of numbers and caloric intake incredibly triggering, and it is hard to move forward constantly being reminded of these numbers. Dietary restriction and weight loss are symptoms of inner turmoil. They are not all-encompassing explanations of the illness. And understanding this aspect of the illness is the first step towards overcoming the Justine attitude towards those diagnosed. I firmly believe that if people can begin to understand a little more about the psychological aspects of eating disorders and mental illness in general, that we might have more success at early diagnosis and therefore higher success rates for treatment. I beg you to look deeper, to stop blaming yourselves for missing things or for wanting to believe this can't happen to you or someone you care about. Current research suggests a possible genetic predisposition to an eating disorder. Some people become ill through trauma, through unfortunate circumstance by experiencing things that are out of their control and wanting to feel they can be in charge again. There are a multitude of triggers for eating disorders. All sorts of people get them unintentionally and not decidedly. My hope is that one day I can get my work published in a book that is able to be distributed to youth centres, mental health facilities, to doctors and psychiatrists, students studying healthcare, to anyone and everyone in the general public, so we all have the opportunity to truly understand. I'm asking today that you take the time to listen to people in your lives. Take the time to research signs and symptoms and look up support services. Imagine yourself in those landscapes and use that empathy to extend a kind word or an offer of support to somebody who needs it. Thank you.